Welcome back to The Roll Radio. Before we get to the show, please remember to hit the like, share, listen, download, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you listen. This allows us to continue bringing you the wonderful guests and great content you have come to expect. Now, let's get to the show. Today's guest is one of the most influential people in the world of Jiu Jitsu and MMA. First is one of Carlson Gracie's best competitors, then is co-founder of not one, but two of the most successful MMA teams in history. On this episode, Ricardo Liborio shares his thoughts about his generation of fighters, the most important early events in MMA, the importance of honor and tradition, how to run a successful Jiu Jitsu Academy, and his current and future plans to help the larger martial arts community. Here's The Roll Radio with Brazilian national champion, IBJJF world champion, ADCC Superfight champion, and the co-founder of Brazilian Top Team and American Top Team, Ricardo Liborio.
Welcome to Raw Radio.
And we're live. Gary, how are you?
I am wonderful. We're going to have a great guest today. You are a business geek, and I think our guest today is going to be able to really shine a light on a lot of wonderful aspects of Jiu-Jitsu as a business, martial arts as a business. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Before we get to that, though, therollradio.com and the Fuji Gi giveaway just gave Professor Egger a free gi. And he is super stoked. If you check out our social media, he was posting pictures of it just this past weekend. He had it on the mat for the first time. He loved it. Go to therollradio.com, take a one-question survey. Only take it once, one entry per person. And at the end, the first episode of every month, we give that gi away. You got to listen for your name and then look for an email, 72 hours to respond to that email. And an amazing product is on its way to you.
Absolutely. I take advantage of it. Let's get to the show. Amazing guest, Professor Liborio. Yeah, I know you told us not to address you by title, but I feel obligated because I've been looking up to you for many, many years. You're one of the pioneers of what we do today. I heard you had a very interesting morning fixing cars, huh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have to actually change my tires, rotate and do some balance on it. It just took it 2 hours. Let me just say this, Florida is changing a lot. So there is a lot of people moving from out of state, right? And a lot of people are moving to Florida, coming down from the East Coast, the Northwest, Northeast. A lot of people from the West is moving to Texas. A lot of people from the East Coast are moving down here to Florida. So guys, the business are booming, but at the same time, it's just the population double. And the real estate is kind of crazy right now. So something that was supposed to be, 1 hour, they come over here, guys said, man, I need another hour to actually rotate and do your things in your car so I was sitting down there waiting for quite a while. So I apologize if I was late. Very Brazilian. It's Brazilian time.
Listen, it all worked out well because I was able to eat lunch, and Gary knows I get really cranky when I don't eat so on time. So it all works out well. So
and I had to watch him eat.
I did it on purpose. I'm just telling you. That's it.
Fabulous. But listen, like I mentioned a moment ago, you're one of the pioneers of Jiu-Jitsu, right? You've been on the mat for extensive period of time. You've gone through your story. Not many actually know how all of this started. And even though we're going to pivot this conversation in a little bit more business aspect, and that's my personal goal, I want to really pick your brain on that. But when did you step on the mat for very, very first time? Do you remember that day?
4 years old, I was doing judo. And I started doing judo, and it's something I was pretty good at it. And it carries on with me for the rest of my life. So I was never the kind of guy that was connected to the team sports. Number one, maybe because I suck in soccer, and everybody plays soccer there in Brazil. And I had no skills, man. I was just one of those, I was short. I was still shorter now that I'm older. But a short guy who could run fast, but man, that was just, just athleticism. I was never skilled with a ball. So I could never really engage on anything with the ball itself. But I was attracted to judo, wrestling, boxing, and jiu-jitsu when it came up. So I did judo first, was 4 years old. Right after that, I did taekwondo. But taekwondo, I was so short, I couldn't lift my leg from nobody's knees height. So I decided to quit taekwondo, and I went to boxing. So I did boxing when I was younger, before I actually did jiu-jitsu.
Was boxing popular? Was boxing popular in Brazil back then? We know judo was. Everybody actually who from your generation, anybody we spoke with, they said like judo was first, and then somehow we bled into jiu-jitsu. Not many spoke about boxing. Was boxing popular?
No, not really. Boxing, where are we from? Rio is actually not extremely popular. They don't have a big program. There's one guy who lived by me, and when the kids in the street, in the school, they started doing something, everybody else goes to it. So I followed my friends and I started doing boxing. It was pretty interesting, but I was young, so I got to take a bus, and I take one or two buses to get to where we were, and it was just too much at a time. It took a break from that, and I got introduced to jiu-jitsu, man. I don't know if you guys ever heard. There's the only red belt from Carlson that Carlson gave to. His name is Carlos Rosado. Mm-hmm. Rosado, at the time, he was already a black belt, and my first girlfriend, was his niece. So I met him on a barbecue one of those days. I was a short and stocky kid, I used to love surfing too. This is another thing, where we live, surfing we live in a coast of Rio. Everybody surfs there, my age there, our age, Murillo, everybody kind of had this encounter with the surfing. But besides that, my previous experience of martial arts, it was actually through the judo and the taekwondo and the boxing, which it was, never was good at boxing. I just did because my friends were doing it. But he just looked at me and said, "You're short and stocky. You should have started training jiu-jitsu." But at the time, guys, jiu-jitsu was not really popular. It not even further away to be what it is today worldwide. But in Rio, it was not popular. We had the Gracies training and competing, but it was something more in the south zone of Rio where we were. And I say, yeah, of course. So meet me at Carson Gracie. And this was a Sunday. Monday I was there at Carson Gracie. But a curiosity is this. I was born and raised in this place called Humaitá. You ever heard about Gracie Humaitá?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So the headquarters is exactly 5 minutes walking from me. I have no idea.
You had no clue.
I really didn't. It was inside a school. But from my house, walking to that place was 5 minutes. But I was introduced to Carson Gracie first, and that was, man, it was immediate love story. I started training from there. From the day one, I never stopped. From after the first training, and I really was in love with the sport. And Carlos Rosado was, which is at the time the black belt, was already a big idol of everybody there. It was an instant, approach. I got there introduced as almost like his nephew. So I stayed. I just fall in love with everything, and I stay.
What was the one appealing thing about jiu-jitsu that you said, if you just fell in love with it? And the main reason why I'm asking is because my story is very similar. I was dragged into the academy against my own will. I didn't want to train, and our listeners know that story. Gary's rolling his eyes because he heard that a million times.
100.
But I was dragged into the academy against my own will. And the moment I start, and my interaction was with Carlson too, when he was here in Chicago. But the moment I stepped on the mat, I was hooked. And now 20 plus years later, I'm still doing. Now I got to put up with this guy. But I love it. I can't get enough of it. What was that one thing for you?
Well, there was one thing is I had this tremendous, synergy with the sport itself. I was the first time that I was good at something. Number one, for me, it was from the first day when I was training with Rosado. Maybe it was his words or his incentive, but I was really good at it. I don't know how or why, but maybe because of the judo background, maybe because 4 years old and I trained judo for quite a while. But it was such a natural develop for me. I was picking up the moves like this. I was understanding the things that for some people it takes a while to understand the chain of jiu-jitsu. For me, it was pretty easy. It came out pretty easy, like reading something that you can't understand right away. So this it was a natural for me. And at the same time, then I felt at home. I really felt at home because I was endorsed by somebody who was there for a long time. I fall into a place that was the guys that are my age. Don't forget this. I grew up with De La Riva, with Murillo, with Amari Bitech, with Walid Ismail, with Babel Duarte. There was a bunch of guys that I grew up with. It was that generation of guys that it transitioned from amateur to more professional. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Everybody else, when I got there at Carlson, was jiu-jitsu was a hobby. It was a second. The guys had a job, and for the vast majority, they have a job or they're going to school and they do jiu-jitsu for the spare time. So it was really in a different level. So the first generation that took in this is a more competitive level. Before that, just the Gracies were doing it. It was just the 80s generation. Yeah. The 70s generation was the guys that there was my idols, people that I saw and look up to it so much. Those guys had jobs. They were going to school. They have a gym and a teaching jiu-jitsu, or they have a job and teaching jiu-jitsu, or they go to school and teaching jiu-jitsu or training jiu-jitsu. But our generation, when I say our, I'm going to tell you this. I was not there. I was one of the guys that had a job. I had a job working in a bank. And at the same time, I was doing this in a massive way because I was waking up 5 o'clock in the morning, training at 7 o'clock in the morning, training afternoon, and training at night after college. It was I was doing this 3 days, 3 times a day, but it really squeezed in everything. I had a motorcycle so I could get to the places faster because the traffic was terrible. But in a motorcycle, I could cut through a lot of stuff. So what it took me in, I think it was the appealing time. I was in a blessed golden age of jiu-jitsu that when jiu-jitsu stopped being, amateur and go to professional, a lot of the guys migrated to Vale Tudo and MMA, but really it was a turnkey, for a platform, maybe international platform with jiu-jitsu and the UFCs and everything else.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you bring up a very good point. I mean, your generation, and some of the names that you mentioned now, the pioneers of what we see today as UFC or MMA. I mean, it was that time where this hobby, quote unquote, converted into this I don't know if you call it professional, because I don't think that you could make money on this, but at this point it was so much, there was an opportunity. And, a decade later, this converted into, some, Vale Tudo, and then it started converting into what UFC. And then in the 90s, we see what started this whole just explosion of
it's interesting, guys. It was this. In the beginning, we're training jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu has this big, challenging to try to establish the name and the brand of the sport itself. And there was the clash of the styles. Mm-hmm. So jiu-jitsu against capoeira, jiu-jitsu against karate, jiu-jitsu against kung fu and luta libre. Mm-hmm. So in 1991, actually, the luta libre, rise up, in Rio, which is the same region that we were, rise above and challenge jiu-jitsu for a vale tudo at a time. And the jiu-jitsu against luta livre vale tudo was a mark because of two things. One is the first time that jiu-jitsu really in that era got together to train against a common, enemy, which was the luta livre guys. So the jiu-jitsu guys from everywhere that we're competing against it started being trained by the second thing, Carlson Gracie, who was the who was the head guy, was the head coach. And he basically put everybody together in the same room in his gym to train everybody off jiu-jitsu against the luta libre. The 1991 luta libre against jiu-jitsu was a big mark also because it was the first time it was televised by this massive prime TV channel on the prime time, which is 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. Everybody was there watching. And after jiu-jitsu beat the luta libre guys, every kid at 14 years old wanted to do jiu-jitsu after that. Yep. Absolutely. Would also, don't forget this, would also create the biggest boom for 1993 UFC was created. So I think that was a big mark on 1991 Jiu-Jitsu against Luta Livre. In 1993 UFC was brought to life and seen as from the background and see that the guys that train and dedicated their lives. It was, I feel blessed. Again, it is one of those generations that make a mark, guys like Murillo, Gurgel, Walid, Amor Ibitech, Marcelo Bering, Leonardo Castelo Branco. There was guys that were competing, they're coming to train together, against the Luta Libre. So this was really an amazing, outstanding time to be there at that place, and I feel like I'm very fortunate to be there. So I don't know, for some reason I recognize that. And for me it was important, like you said, because guys, I went to school for business, although I hated business administration. I went to school for business. I was working in a bank, in the Bank of Brazil, which is one of the most solid jobs that you can ever have there in Brazil. I was a manager there inside, dealing with big companies. And I would never be happy. I have to make a choice. I made the choice to work in the things that I love it, which is the sport itself. And I drop it of what I was doing. People thought it was crazy. My family, imagine this. Are you out of your mind? You're going out of the Bank of Brazil to work with jiu-jitsu?
Who said that? Was it your parents or who?
Oh, my mom. I remember my mom talking. I was 28 years old or something. You were insane. You're crazy. But I would never be happy. I'll tell you this. I would never be happy working on a desk job. There's times that I was there, guys, that I get in. Jiu-jitsu was my medicine too, because I worked from 8 o'clock to 5, and many times I get there and I crack of dawn, right, earlier with no sun, and got out of there. It was night, during the wintertime, and it was depressing for me. This was really, and I was an outside guy, an outdoor, and it was not a life for me. And when I decided to do this, was one of the biggest decisions, big leaps, fate on the sport, fate on myself, really. And even it worked this bring this to light. I have a very good friend of mine, and he says, "Man, why are you so afraid to be out of a Bank of Brazil, although it's a very stable job, but why are you afraid? There's billions of people in the world that are not working at this stable job, and at the same time, they're successful." And he basically told me this, and that's when it really got the epiphany on it is, man, you're successful in your relationship with your parents, with your girlfriend, with your friends, with your hobby, with jiu-jitsu, with things, even in a bank that I don't like it. I was being successful for having the discipline and have some academic success, but why you're afraid to be successful, why you think you're not going to be successful outside? So that's what a really good decision for me. That was
what
epiphany.
Was the answer?
And you know what? Huh?
What
Did
was,
you have an
what
answer?
was the answer? Why were you?
The answer
so
was
afraid?
yes. I got to invest in myself. I got to invest in my happiness. I will never be happy working in the bank. I will never be happy working behind a desk, or it is just not for me. It would never be for me. I have to do this.
Let me ask you this. At which point this seed is being planted in your head? So at which point, right? Because there's a few, it's a long path of decisions to make that kind of life-changing event, right? So at which point you started thinking about this? This is something I would like to do. I would like to teach. I would like to do jiu-jitsu for a living. And then obviously, job security and other things. Like, where does this start?
But this is all start from the get-go. Have a little, see that I went to school for business, but I work in a corporate world, which just makes a little bit difference on understanding of a little bit of the background and the necessities. You can't go to business not knowing the back end, right? Or the previous. Like for us, and we can talk about this later, but you do have to have a basic understanding of marketing, of sales, of the development of your product, your demographics, the place that we're being in. All these little things are important for you to understand how the business works. You think it's just buy and sell. It's not the way it works. You have to pay your taxes. You have to, pay for real estate. You contemplate future business and opportunities. How do you start from that? And I kind of have a good foundation. Like I knew it in a certain way when I moved to United States with my experience of getting out of Bank of Brazil and working with Brazilian top team and the business model that we have there. I knew it that professional athletes are really not the bread and butter. That's not the sustainability on it. They're marketing dollars, but if you don't have a program that is for the 98% of people that train, they train for recreational reasons. They do it from, to feel good or to look good or both, but you have 2% there that goes to that high level standards of competition and training. I'm not talking about your average competitor that train and compete once a year. I'm talking about the guy who really depend on this. High performance guys that do whatever it takes to be a champion. That's really minimum. That's 2%. So you can't just depend on this 2%. You got to have this product for the 98%, but you have to structure that, and the structure comes to standard operational procedures.
Absolutely.
So when I started really thinking of all this, you asked me when you started thinking of that. I started thinking of that for me is when I was not happy going there every day. I was feeling miserable. I knew it, what I don't want it to. That's what's the number one thing. Yeah. You may not know what you want, but if you know what you don't want is the big set. I knew that I don't want it to be there for a long time.
How long did it take you from the point of you start thinking about it to the point when you convert full-time into jiu-jitsu is what you do for a living? A lot of people out there, I mean, we'll talk about this deeper just in a moment, but there's a lot of black belts out there. There's a lot of brown belts out there, honestly. A lot of people in general who want to do jiu-jitsu for a living. And yet, the success rate behind and again, success is defined different ways for different people, but success rate behind running an academy is so low, in my opinion, today, that there's a lot of people who do a very poor job, right? So how long did it take you?
So there's two things, right? For me, take a while, because don't forget this. I was fortunate to have an understanding of a corporate because I work in a bank with the largest bank in Brazil. But at the same time, I came from a background of business, which doesn't mean anything. I'm terrible in business. I'm not a business administrator. I just went to school because that was the first thing to connect to the bank at a time. I'm just saying that for my understanding, the basic understanding of the business, you have to understand this, who you cater to, where those find those people, and how you're going to present value to them. Value for martial arts, what are we doing, guys? It is in the social skills and life skills of the kids.
Absolutely.
80% of our business are kids related.
Mm-hmm.
20% is adults. They understand this. Although jiu-jitsu, it is an adult martial arts, and that's what a lot of traditional martial arts schools are putting a jiu-jitsu program at night, because nobody's training taekwondo and karate anymore. You know, people are doing some mixed martial arts, but jiu-jitsu has a great thing that you don't get hurt as much doing jiu-jitsu. You don't have the same impact. And you can really train. You can really train jiu-jitsu without getting too hurt in terms of the impact. Of course, you got torsions in that, but try to do wrestling. Try to do judo. Try to spar Muay Thai, you know, and go to work the next day. It doesn't work at the same way, you know. Even MMA, it's not the same. And in jiu-jitsu, you really can train without getting any injuries and any impact. This was a big motivator. And jiu-jitsu itself is put as guys, in reality, is a game. I always do this, and I do this in an intro class. My intro class is, and I explain the story a little bit of jiu-jitsu and how the branches of jiu-jitsu goes. But it goes from there into, I do a brief explanation of the score system. And this is important because a takedown is 2 points. A pass to guard is 3 points, but I explain what is a guard, which is nothing more than your legs. Pass your legs and go to a side control. Every time you hold it 3 seconds, you pass the guard, 3 points. Mount position, 4 points. Before that's knee and belly, 2 points. Mount position, 4 points. Back take with the hooks. You know, you got the hooks, you got 4 points for it. Sweeps you got for 2 points. But even if you don't know anything, in this first introduction to jiu-jitsu on the score system, now you know how to play the game. And you talk about, of course, you have to talk about the submissions. One of the first things you do, talk about the submissions and tapping and how you tap, not just in the person. If the person can see it, it has to be verbalized or somewhere that the person can see it. So sometimes you stamp your foot, sometimes you tap in a person, just don't tap on the ground, you know, and that happens a lot. So at this explanations, and this is a good point too, guys. Understand this. You have to structure your business at the point that the instructor don't pass by this. A person or a kid that never heard of the sport before, they have to be introduced about tapping. They have to be introduced about why you bow the mats. You know, this is a great explanation. Why you bow the mats. You bow the mats. Just what do we do is based in respect and tradition. You bow the mats to show respect to the founding fathers of the sport, to the instructors and to the teammates. And it is tradition. Tradition is not different than the salute in the military.
Absolutely. Tradition
is not different than a handshake or a wave. Somebody create this tradition on a say goodbye, waving the hand. It's tradition. You bow the mat for tradition. So there's no religious connotations. There's no putting down anybody, or there's no sect or any type of a leadership beside, you know, applying tradition into something. You know, traditions is everywhere. Tradition is in uniform. Tradition is in. There's so many examples of traditions, guys, you know. So, but you come down to this, you have to train people. And this is the major point. You train people. For you to get a business well-rounded, you have to understand the basics of the business itself, right? How do you have a point of sale? How do you really capitalize on the business itself? And there are so many details that we can talk to, but you do have to have a system for each one.
Well, I think you bring up a very important point. Right now, you're talking about running the business, and whether you're selling lemons or you selling jiu-jitsu as a service, it really doesn't matter. It's a service. It's a business of selling this, right? Now, teaching jiu-jitsu is completely something else. This is something, and we talk to so many people about this, right? Teaching and running Jiu Jitsu Academy, it's two different things. This is apples and oranges, right? It's just they mix each other because of what the environment we surround ourselves in, but they are two separate skills, right? Let me ask you this, flat out. How come so many people fail or they are not as successful as they want to be in running Jiu Jitsu Academy? This shouldn't be this complicated. You talk about common sense. Talk to people. show them a value, understand who you're selling it to, have a process, standing operating procedure. Gary heard this on a daily basis from me.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of times people sell themselves instead of selling the art, instead of selling, they don't go into it thinking about a business. They go into it thinking about, look at the medals on my wall, look at what I've accomplished in the sport, instead of how do I grow a business? How do I make sure that I retain students? How do I make sure that I'm presenting the art correctly? I think people get into it a lot of times, like we do a lot of different things, for the wrong reasons. And they don't have that forethought to really think about what it means because running an academy is running a business. You know, showing people some stuff on the mat is not running a business. You know, that's not even having a class, right? So I think they need all these other things before they even unlock the door for the first time, in order to be successful.
I agree. There is a lot of people that, don't forget this, a lot of people that leave their jobs to go open a gym. They're doing this out of passion for the sport, or passion for something that they feel like they have a great synergy or affinity. But beyond anything else, they feel good about it. And it's not difficult to compare why you're working for someone and you live in their own standards and live in their own standard operational procedures. And it's an everyday basis, but it's not yours, or it's not you. Some people understand that, well, have a regular job, and in the end of this regular job, I will receive money, and with this money, I buy quality of life for my kids. But some people can't just live out of there. They live it out of the passion, to feel good, to feel like they're not just belong to something, but they are doing some meaningful things, you know. But doesn't mean that you're going to be successful just with the passion. You can't. You may have tons of students. They're not paying you anything. And I have seen it, and so many examples I have lived this so many times. And it's hard to change a culture than you started the culture. You know, don't, and another thing, just don't mistake a very passionate person, you know, for a great teacher. You know, it can be so passionate, in love with the sport and in teaching, and people will feel that 100%. But doesn't mean you're going to be a great teacher. Great teacher in what basis itself? Is a great teacher in a high performance? Is a great teacher of a social character education skills? You know, there's a lot to be in it. I agree. There's a lot of people wants to be on a picture, on a pedestal, on the founding fathers, all this, and Jiu-Jitsu present that to you too. They wanted to feel that solid there's so many in-depth, you know, comments that I could make it about people that are doing this and maybe for the wrong reasons, but it's still a reason. And it's okay if you're really helping someone. It's okay. But to be a business owner, and don't mistake, you can have a tremendous enterprise and you teach in a class and being successful to have so many students, but you cannot go to a second location because you don't have other you. So you have a successful enterprise, but you don't have a successful business. This is different.
Yeah.
Successful business is when you're ready to train somebody else to be working over there. Is not depending directly on you and your presence. It's just simply because you have it down. You have the business down. You can train and replicate, and you can actually substitute people. And that's business. That's really business. That's how to roll out a business. That's so much into this, guys. But at the same time, again, when I started, I had no clue what I was going to do. And it's still, there was no market. There was no jiu-jitsu market. The jiu-jitsu market is still new, guys.
Yeah.
I told this story. I'm just going to repeat again. So first of all, we have American Top Team, which was the brand. And as much as popular as can be the name of American Top Team right now, American Top Team is still not self-explanatory. So what is American Top Team? Is that a gear company? Is that it is a baseball place? What is this? but at the same time, people would put American Top Team Jiu-Jitsu. And in a true story, one of our affiliates put American Top Team Jiu-Jitsu at the front of his business. And at the same mall, they had a sushi place. And how many times people call him thinking that Jiu-Jitsu was a sushi bar? And it's lack of understanding. So that's when the name of martial arts has started coming in, you know, and is Jiu-Jitsu martial arts? Yes, Jiu-Jitsu martial arts carry values of a martial arts, carries tradition of a martial arts. It's different than combat sports. Combat sports is different. Doesn't carry the same tradition. Wrestling is a combat sport. Boxing is a combat sport, right? It's not the same thing as judo or taekwondo or jiu-jitsu. It's a different story. Yeah. And at the same time,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was kind of, go ahead, finish your thought, because I wanted to ask you something else.
And at the same time, people have to understand that the name of jiu-jitsu is not even popular, not even nowadays. People still have to be educated in what it is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, my kids do karate, right?
Yeah.
You know, every time I say they do jiu-jitsu, oh, is that like karate? All the time still, right?
Yeah.
Well,
yes, it is.
You know, anytime these conversations come up with my instructors or here at the academy, you know, we often talk about the simple fact that probably about 95% people coming into average Jiu-Jitsu Academy don't even know what Jiu-Jitsu is. They have no clue. They've never done it. Their exposure is very minimal. Even though they might have seen UFC, their understanding of Jiu-Jitsu is very minimal. And especially if you're talking about parents and kids, right? So that engagement and really allowing them to understand what they are getting in return in regards to value is so critical, right? Like, and I'm curious what your thoughts about this is. But I often say we don't teach jiu-jitsu. We teach life skills. We teach how to think, how to troubleshoot, how to process information under stress, how to make friends, how to make relationships, how to say, I had enough today.
Yeah.
Let's start over.
And those life skills, guys, are what makes us different. The life skills that we have it, and the fact that jiu-jitsu is fun. It's fun to do it. When you learn the little rules of the game, it's fun. Like you're grappling for position, you're grappling to win, but it's fun. You just have to engage and understand what it is. But the parents that don't know what it is, they have to understand that this brings life skills and social skills and character education to it. But at the same time, what do we lack on it? It is the training and how to deliver that. So that's why, and I'm going back again, guys, when I got out of American Top Team, you know, I immediately thought about open up a new team or at least an affiliation. And I came up with the name of a martial arts nation. The martial arts nation is something that to solve the problem, everybody would know what a martial arts nation is, right? And inside of there, you ask information for martial arts, and you presented the jiu-jitsu part, or you presented Muay Thai, or presented something the way you deliver. But you have to create something for the kids, in my opinion. You know, jiu-jitsu carries on the opportunity, not just the kids to really train, instead of just doing katas, really train and defend themselves without having a problem of hurting somebody else or just the punches and the kicks. But coming with the MMA background as a coach too, I think is super important for them to learn everything. So the structure of the curriculum, I truly believe that you have to get self-defense and you have to introduce a couple of things of MMA, which I believe is jiu-jitsu. I believe jiu-jitsu is divided in 4 branches. Jiu-jitsu for jiu-jitsu gi, which is the sports jiu-jitsu we see in competition. Jiu-jitsu no gi, also for competition or grappling. Jiu-jitsu of self-defense, which includes the weapons too. And some of the striking defense. And the jiu-jitsu for MMA that you have to have is some of the strike and the ground and pound and things that you haven't seen. But I believe they have to put in everything. I don't believe if you're not showing a jab and a cross to a kid, you're doing a disfavor to their own preparedness, you know, for getting in a fight. somebody knows how to swing. You may never know what a takedown is, but I guarantee somebody's going to close their eyes and going to swing like this. Is a natural instinct in the human being, right? And you got to be prepared for that. Even if it's just block it and take them down, or block it and know how to, properly counterattack for that. But when you prepare kids to defend themselves for that, man, it is important. So I really do recommend it, even in jiu-jitsu schools, to bring up a minimum of a self-defense, which is including some of the striking too.
So why so many academies or instructors don't do any of this? This seems like common sense.
Because there's a lot of purists, a lot of people are purist jiu-jitsu, and I understand, in the background, I don't feel comfortable, but understand this, for the kids, it is extremely important, in my opinion, that they know the minimum of which is out there, which is bulletproof. It's proved it is efficient. Don't tell me that a double leg or a single leg or some judo takedowns or a jab and a cross and a hook it's not efficient. I have seen it, from the old days of Vale Tudo. Well, what is MMA today? From Vale Tudo to Noah's Bar to MMA, I have seen it. How important for you to learn everything. Super important. Nobody nowadays not knowing the basics of jiu-jitsu or the basics of the striking or the basics of the takedowns, or can say that are complete to defend themselves on the street. That's my opinion. Again, it's my opinion. But again, there's purists over there that just believe that just jiu-jitsu will solve there's a solution for anything, which is, you can believe in everything, you can believe in it, but if we don't knowing some of those backgrounds, it's unrealistic, right? Every single one of the high levels, even jiu-jitsu guys that out there and UFC and MMA learn how to strike, learn how to sprawl or take people down, and of course have to learn how to strike on the ground too. But anyway, not talking about this, going back again, it's super important to create value of the sport itself. Guys, don't forget this. Again, 2 to 3% put their kids there to be competitors. Let's say 3%. 97% of people go there just to get those kids and to learn how to defend themselves, increase the self-confidence, increase the awareness of the anti-bullying and what to do in situations like that, for the mental, for the social, for the character education. But number one, people have to learn how to sell this. If you just sell the techniques, and this is, you're talking about this, why people are so concentrated, on the medals and trophies. It is in the background of jiu-jitsu for being legit sport, just concentrating on competition, which is okay. You still can do competition. That's not a problem at all. But 97% will not compete. 97% will not compete. 3%.
So let me ask you this. So how come, if there's only 3%, statistics are showing there's only 3% people who do compete or actively are very involved in that aspect of the sport, of the art that we are all exploring, how come there are instructors at academies who will show Baron Bullows or flying triangles on the first class, on the first week, versus teaching these guys how to hip escape or how to break the fall or how to defend yourself from a hook or a strike or whatever the case is? Like, you very passionately talk about these fundamentals, but yet that's not the case. There are so many of them out there.
There's so many out there because the industry, the media itself, the media that we see right now, guys, is just really pointing out the competitors.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the media that we're seeing, guys, it doesn't go for the regular guy. It doesn't go for the doctor who's just doing the research to try to help people from cancer, and doing high-level operations, or that police officer that, uses his skills in daily basis. Right now, the specialized media of jiu-jitsu is competitors. And I know that. I've been there before. But come on, this 97% of people don't do this. 3% of people really actually compete. Yeah. And a micro fraction goes to the world championships and win. Yes, not even to win. We'll go compete in the world championships. How many millions of people do you think there's doing jiu-jitsu right now in the world? And how many people really actually compete? But the structure, it was for you to prove your legitimacy, you have to be some sort of competitor in jiu-jitsu, right? That's a lot to do with that. People, a lot of connect with that. Which you understand that, but doesn't mean success in business. Success in business is for you to charge for something, you have to make people understand the value of what you bring. So but to understand the value of what you bring, where you're going to make that turnkey. If I try to sell you something, I have to show you that my product is good because I'm going to deliver this to your kid. I'm going to build this formation in a nice, great environment, and your kid's going to learn the basics of everything and how to defend themselves, but how to feel comfortable in bad situations or pressure, right? All these things are important, but it has to be delivered to a comprehensive and standard operational procedures, man. And it's not I'm talking about books. You can have all the books in the world that put it right in front of a lot of structures there. They won't read it.
No, you're talking about standard. You're talking about procedures, meaning the agreed process to whatever that is.
Correct.
Right? I mean, standard operating procedures should be saying hi to somebody.
But not just instructor. Don't forget this. Don't forget this. When you talk about kids, has to be fun, has to be with all these deliverables, with all these fundamentals of the characterization. But at the same time, the parents sign the check, and you have to deliver to the checks the values that you're going to bring to your kids. And you have to, in course of time, showing that you are doing it.
Yep.
Because you can say whatever it is in the beginning. You can say that, this is great for your kids' self-confidence. This is great for your kids' discipline. How you deliver the discipline for the kid. How you really present a character education program that in 5 minutes inside the class, the instructor is going to be talking to the kids and then make them understand, make them memorize what discipline is. Like discipline is something that you do it every day. It doesn't matter how you feel. Mm-hmm. How many instructors really know how to deliver that and make the kids memorize that and take it to a homework that the kid's going to, okay, now you guys is going to prove that you're doing discipline or self-discipline. Self-discipline is something that you do it by yourself without your mom and your dad asking you to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So you do it homework every day. Mm-hmm. So your homework is going to be done by yourself without your mom asking. Mm-hmm. You're going to take the trash out by yourself and do your bed by yourself without your mom or your dad to remind you of this. And this is self-discipline.
Absolutely.
And if you have a comprehensive program that the instructor can do this and ask these homeworks, you'll be able to deliver to the kid and show the parents the value of your program, which is in social skills. So it is in character education and life skills, much more than the beating bolo. That makes sense? Than the beat an arm bar. And this is reality, guys. Yeah. But even with that, you still can have that program of the beating bolo for the 3%. They have to pay for you to teach in a high level and for you to go over there during the weekends. Take your time to be in a competition during the weekends to get this 3% of 10% tops of a competitor school. 10% top of a competitor school is from competitors in reality. But all this time and all this place, the problem is people are not knowing how to build those values. And don't forget this, who makes the cells? Your staff, your front desk person has to be able to build the cell and a comprehensive point of sale, the POS, has to take it for the credit card and have to overcome all the negatives and overcome all the difficulties they were having from the sales. I'm going to talk to my husband. I don't have my check here right now. All those little things, man. You see it.
We've heard that before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm laughing. The last 5-10 minutes of this conversation is just like something that replays in my head on a daily basis over and over and over again. And I'm going to use this. I'm going to steal this and show it to the kids in kids class so they know it's not just coming from me. that how important it is. It's great stuff. I love it.
Before we move on forward, I want to give shout out to Ray. Ray is our general manager, our program manager here at the Academy. So a lot of credit goes to him because he does deal with some of these things. And just like on the beginning of this conversation, we talked about, being an instructor, being a business owner, that's one thing. Those are separate skills. But also people who are in the front of your academy, the people who say hello, the people who welcome, that's a separate skill. That's a skill that really has to, you are almost a pain cushion because there is some frustration points and they want to have delivered service and all the other things. And in a way, you're listening to a lot of this and you do have to show the value. Like when somebody comes into the academy, they will not see the instructor first. They will not see the jiu-jitsu first. They'll see all the other things. They'll see where the shoes are. They'll see the locker rooms. They'll see how clean the facility is. They'll see everything before they see the jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is just like a byproduct of everything else, isn't it?
100%. How you step on the place, the first thing, the first smell, the rug on the floor, what do they see in the vision, how they come in and how they get out. All this has to be seen. There's strategies for all of this. Where you have your point of sale, somebody grab a T-shirt in your retail store and take it over here. All this has to be extremely well thought. And it's not just well thought from the beginning. Guys, it has to be the maintenance. The maintenance is so important. You cannot just start it well and 2 years in and you did not do any reconstruction or not even painting in your store. You have to looking for things. So it has to be standard operational procedures from everything.
Yeah, I'm laughing because there's something always changing here. Thomas never stops. It's always moving forward, changing for the better. What can we do differently? Why isn't this working? It's a constant. Yeah. And that's why he's been here. And while other places have gone by the wayside.
Correct, 100%. And how you train your instructor too. Like I'm a big fan of intro classes, guys, because an intro class for somebody who never done the sport first, it is really one-on-one connection that another thing, it demonstrates how important the front desk is being connected to the floor. Super important. The front desk, when you welcome someone, you have to understand why they're here. It's to lose weight, is to feel more confident. Whatever it is, kids is easier because the parents, they're writing down what they feel like the kids needs or deserves. The adults are a little bit different. You don't want to talk down an adult, but you rarely adult is going to tell you that you have, self-esteem problems or self-confidence problems. Rarely you're going to take this from adult right away. So take him to a good intro class to make him feel, that you're touching and touchy subjects without talk them down. You can't go straight into asking about that. It's
a while back. Somebody told me, and I'm curious what your thoughts about this. Somebody told me a while back that a brand new student who's walking into academy doesn't want those three things to happen to them. One, they don't want to get hurt. Two, they don't want to be embarrassed. And three, they don't want to be wrong. And maneuvering between those three things while you introducing them to this brand new thing, which is jiu-jitsu, it's very difficult. Hopefully they won't get hurt. I mean, hopefully, because if they do, that's probably a big one. But they likely will be wrong because it's a brand new skill, and they very likely will be embarrassed. Right? And maneuvering between those three is a big part of the success. What are your thoughts on this?
Like I said, I like the intro class or individual or in group. More individual or in group. Number one thing is that you cannot pass a sale. You cannot have somebody walking in or drive by or calling you and you're not trying to bring them in. You have to. Whoever is doing the sales have to have the skills enough and a script enough to bring the person in, to try it on. And if you have a good approach in the intro class where the front desk is attached directly to the mat person, to the instructor, not you can deliver all this super requirements, which is don't feel like you're not going to get hurt, don't feel embarrassed, don't feel like they are alone in doing it. All this thing, man, it has to be in a welcoming environment that you understand that they're there and you just supply something that whatever they needed. So you definitely have the front desk delivering the message that this guy is there to lose weight, or this guy here is there to be a competitor, or this guy here, you know what I'm saying, has to have a connection. And at the same time, after this first class is done, the mat person, the instructor has to handle to the front desk to make the sell so you can be successful. Just how many times, guys, it's still on today basis, we see jiu-jitsu schools that don't have a front desk person.
Oh, I know.
You have an instructor, you're not a front desk person. Where you make the sell?
Yep.
You have to stop what you're doing. You have to stop your class to actually get the credit card and make the sell.
Well, no, some of them don't have credit cards.
Yeah,
But I don't mean to be laughing at anybody, but you're absolutely right. These are, I think, very simple things that you can really automate the process. And by automate, I don't mean it in negative, to streamline it, to make it simple, right? I think really jiu-jitsu sells itself is where a lot of errors are being made is between these handoffs, between the communication, is between and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if somebody comes into my academy, they have shown interest in martial arts. Right. I already have, they want to be here. If they walked out of the academy and they didn't join, that means that something went wrong.
Something went wrong. And you have to find out why.
Right. Gary, what do I always say?
Sometimes
understand why.
Sometimes it's the smell. Honestly, sometimes the place is not appealing to a person. Let me just tell you something. Something very basic happened. I used to try to bring some of my fighters. Let me give an example. Mike Brown. Mike Brown is one of the best coaches out there. Mike Brown used to be our front desk person. And we're doing this because Mike Brown, we want Mike Brown to be helped so he can stay down here. And Mike, before he moved from Maine, he was a front desk person on a fitness gym. So when he came down, we wanted to help him, and we put him on a front desk. But let me tell you this, and he's a nice guy. But I'm telling you this, guys. I'm telling you this. People are afraid to walk into the martial arts schools. Mm-hmm. People are afraid. There's something in there. And in the moment that I switch Mike Brown to a middle-aged lady who can be seen as a mom, everything changes. Mm-hmm. Everything changes. Because you see your mom in the front desk and you're not afraid anymore. So see the little things like that makes a huge difference. You don't want to be exposed. Sometimes you're embarrassed to walk in a place because you feel like you're exposed. You're exposed to be embarrassed. And it's competition. Competition is this, guys. Competition is a great example. People are not afraid to go compete. People are afraid to get embarrassed in front of their loved ones.
100%.
You're afraid to be embarrassed in front of people. That's it. But in a moment that you'll find out in competition that if you have a good support system, the fans itself or the people that you're so afraid of losing in front of it will not matter. And you started getting better and better in competition because it stopped being so important to try to please the people. Makes sense? And because competition is no more than if you train every day and you compete well, there's a lot to do with this feeling of losing your own identity. Sometimes you're afraid to look at the mirror and see that you're not the guy that sometimes you make yourself believe that you are because you lost it. You got to come with that. You got to come. This is one of the best virtues and values that we have from martial arts is just suck it up and come back in the next day after a loss. Rebuild yourself. That's one of the best things you can teach your kids is lose doesn't mean that you have to like it, but you have to deal with it. And you come back in the next day with a desire and a faith that you can do better. And that's it. That's the key to success It's a key for success for absolutely everything. It's a key for success for business, relationships, and everything else. You know.
That's why they say you learn more from the failures than you learn from the winnings. I mean, it's the process of evolution, it's the process of growing. And we can't grow if we don't identify what we need to improve. It is so fundamental to us as humans, in my opinion. Like, it's just, we have to identify what needs to improve before we start making those changes.
It is our pride. You know, there's our pride to get in the way.
Yeah.
And I have lived that. I have, how many times, especially in getting old, you know, you come from a perspective of success, of being competitor and training with people. And when you get old, you just simply can't do this anymore. You can't compete with a young buck. And at the same time, you have that competitiveness on you that you have to manage psychologically, dealing with failure of losing it. Because you're old.
Well,
but it's between this and not being on a match that you love it so much, that brought you so much pleasure, that make you so happy. You know, all this is important. You have to just redo it, your own standards and your own approach for the sport itself. You got to approach the sport that every day that you're there, you're healthier than you're not there. And that's learning how to lose, man. It's learning how to lose your youth.
I'll tell you personally, that was always the hardest for me, because I love being on the mat every single day, and teaching every day or multiple times a day, you know, takes a toll on you. And now, like, my students know I can't train 3-4 classes a day. I can't. There's no way physically. I'm just not capable. And I wish I was young like Gary, but I'm not. So
nobody wishes they were young like me. But what I was going to say is, I think that that's what's so beautiful about jiu-jitsu, is that you deal with those failures, not even on a grand scale of at a competition, at the Worlds, anything like that. You deal with it every time the bell rings, and every roll you deal with these things, these little failures that you can grow from and be better. And even if you're not young or super athletic or super talented, you can always take something away from those 5 or 8 minutes that can make you better tomorrow. Every time, if your head's screwed on right, if you approach it that way, if you approach it with, I'm going to get demolished, or this sucks and I hate it, I'm not getting any better, well, then obviously you're not going to. But if you say, what can I learn from these 5 minutes, or talk to somebody afterwards about what went wrong and what went right, that's what's so beautiful about the sport, is you can always find something great out of it.
It's so much. You can build a community around you that it will be even more important than just the trophies and medals too, guys. And if you have the right mentality on how to build a community, that's going to be your therapy. Guys, jiu-jitsu and mental wellness are so related. When you are in a supportive environment, it is so pleasing to see how much people are dealing with their depression and with their anxiety, with their stress, doing a jiu-jitsu. So that itself is medicine.
Oh yeah.
But in between you winning and losing it, man, it's for me. For me, I put a lot of thought into this, because I used to compete and train and do well in training. And when you're old, 55 years old, you started really feeling all the age and lack of everything else. But in between this and not being in there, man, that doesn't make any sense. I have to put my pride down and help the next generation, but beyond anything else, be in there. Be in there. Because also, there is one thing about us, instructors and professors of jiu-jitsu, is that there's a lot of people that work their whole life for money, and they have definitely all the retirement plan and everything else. But suddenly, when the work is gone, you don't know what to do with your lives. Mm-hmm. You know, for us, man, we know that we're going to be 100 years old and we're going to be there. We're going to be helping the next generations, just, you know, in a wheelchair or with diapers on it, but you'll be there. Yes. to be there because you want to see you grow in the next generation, and you know how much of this influence, and the next, community member, they have it around you. But even with that said, guys, we have to prepare more programs and more certificates and more training for the next generation of instructors and business owners and the staff members. All those people we got to create such a community that it can be sustainable, and more people like us can be doing this and keep the quality of the life of our families, our kids. Each one of us wanted to get quality of life and good education and good opportunities for your kids. And at the same time, we got to go back to the core of the business itself. Sometimes we are being selfish because we wanted to keep doing it and training high-level people that you give you the satisfaction to be champions, but you're not thinking about your daughter that, you wanted to give the best school zone so that she can go to a good school, and for that you need money to go live in a place. All these things are subject of thinking.
Yeah, and this is the important part, I think. As we all get older, and we all do, at some point we will expire, but it is preparing the next generation to take over what we do. Because I don't know what Gary or you think about this, but honestly, I love to be on the mat until I'm 90. I want to be, but I don't want to be teaching 40 hours a week. I don't. I want to build a system where my instructors have all the tools they need. They have all their experience and knowledge that I can pass on, so they are successful. They are set for success for the future, and I can enjoy by being there and supporting them in a different capacity. Am I out of my mind?
No, you're completely right. The problem is people, number one, Jiu-Jitsu doesn't have much of those instructions. And this is what we're doing as a Black Belt magazine. We're providing a lot of those solutions, right? And then number two is, there's another thing too, guys. The business of the retirement plan for us, school owners, are into the real estate.
Yep.
The moment that you have your business down and round, it does not depend on you. Or paying, because there's two major components of our business. It's salaries and the real estate, the rent.
Lease, yeah.
To be able to, at one point, buy the real estate in 15 years, you're paying the mortgage. 15 years later, now you own the real estate, and your own company is paying you the rent. So it's the retirement plan for everybody who invested in Jiu-Jitsu, even in a small scale. What you have to do is have this business solutions enough to be 15 years sustainable, successful. So you can pay the instructors, pay the rent, pay the minimum, whatever you have there is a back end there, the overhead, and pay the mortgage. That's the solution, guys. If you do this, you're investing in really your real estate or your retirement plan. That's what it is. But people have to find the business solutions first.
I wish that a lot of instructors listen to this conversation. Because there's so many golden nuggets in this whole thing, so many little lessons that you are sharing that I really and I personally know so many that want to be successful, but they don't know how. They were never shown how. And honestly, sometimes they just don't want to listen. And by opening our minds and really, venturing out and setting up some of these processes and doing simple things like listening, understanding what our clients want and the value that we need to provide to them is really the fundamental step of our success. From there, we can take it in farther and farther and farther, and really set this up for success where we truly can make living. And I don't mean just get a check. I mean, have a retirement plan. Our kids can go to schools and other things, from the business of martial arts or jiu-jitsu in particular.
And I agree 100% we're going to get there. The traditional martial arts is there. They are doing it. And they do not have, and jiu-jitsu is very appealing for a certain age. What happened with us is that we do not carry the same structure that they have it on a kids programs. I think if we can build up those values on a kids program, the adults itself already seen it. What the traditional martial arts schools are doing is they are bringing jiu-jitsu inside their school as a separate program. They're doing this. So they see already the value for the adults. We have to structure the values for the kids, not just the value for the kids itself for daily basis classes, but also in how to teach generations of the staff and instructors and the school owner. Don't forget this. The school owner have to deal with things that majorly the staff not always does, or the instructor itself. The whole back end from previously, before you open a gym, you have to have the demographics. Oh. You have to have your straight structure. Point out, how many people are coming by you? Are they going to see you? Are they going to walk in? They're going to drive by? How did that work? How are you going to be capturing more people? Mm-hmm. How you know about your community around? It's all this important. That's lessons, guys. And I believe that we're going to get there. It's just a matter of a time. And that's my new project. This is where we're doing it. The Black Belt Magazine Jiu-Jitsu is preparing this as the back end for the instructor itself. So what are we doing is preparing structures or new generation of people, the mind like it, that wants to live off jiu-jitsu and create that pride in the community. Because also, we all know this, guys, we have to prove to our families that what are we doing is valuable for community itself. Sometimes they don't see our struggles because we don't know. I lived that before. We have to have. If you have a partner, if you have a wife, you have likely a partner in your business itself. You got to make the value even for them. They have to understand that we're there, to help people. We're there, to make money also. But there is value in what we're doing. Some people are embarrassed to tell to the other parents of your kids that you're doing this for a living. How we build this, how we build more pride in our community, how we make people feel more, the proper value of what do we do, helping people. We're going to get there. I truly believe that we're going to get there. We just got a structure.
Yeah,
that's it.
I agree. 100%. And you're right. The support of the family, it's critical. So that's a big. He's laughing because he knows I'm right.
I wouldn't be here without the support. I would not be here without the support of the family.
Hey, listen, we've been at this for a long time, like over an hour. Before we wrap this up, we do this at the end of every single episode. We didn't tell you, so there's a small surprise. But we'll ask you five. Gary is going to ask you 5 questions. So if you don't like the questions,
it's Gary. Okay. All right.
We'll ask you quick questions. Gary. First thing that comes to your mind, just kind of, rapid shots. Let's see where this is going to go and wrap up.
Yeah, so you started as a little kid, but you didn't get to jiu-jitsu till you were 15. We touched on it a little bit. What was it like the first time you stepped on that mat, on the jiu-jitsu mat?
Like I said, I was not afraid. I was very welcoming. Somebody that I knew brought me in. He was a very recognizable person inside the community. So I felt really good. And I started training and things was very natural to me. I felt like that belonged there, that I found my place, that I found my sport. That's what happens right there, and ended up being my medicine. I couldn't live without it. Still to today, I can't live without it.
That's wonderful. That's awesome. What has been your most rewarding achievement?
Can you repeat that again? Most
rewarding achievement, either on or off the mats. It's up to you, whatever you think.
My kids, by far. I love my family. I love my kids so much. I'm proud of what they accomplish. I'm proud of who they become. Still a work in process always, but that's what I live. This is my family.
Beautiful, beautiful. Over all these years, have you ever wanted to quit?
Oh, many times. Holy moly. I just have one thing, guys. I have this good understanding that this quitting is not for me. But how many times this came to my mind? 1,000,000 times. But I know how to deal with this. It's almost like the the fear in competition. The fear in competition will come. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. The difference is you know how to deal with that. You know how to trigger. You feel like, that thing tingling, and you just know that you're just hanging in there. Just hanging in there. Just do what you do it, but just don't quit. And sometimes I go there too further away because I have this mechanism in my mind that I should not quit. I will not do this. That would be the testimony of failure. It's not losing it. It's really quitting is the testimony of failure. Is this really? But at the same time, you have to know how to let it go. And that's a very thin line, a very thin line right there. That's my struggle. But how many times I have thought about quitting, how many times it's just, I would not do this. I would not. And I would, every time that I had that thought, and at one point that was started structuring me, and I hanging in there, and I just really felt that pleasing sensation, and I really realized that I was right, that I should not quit, that this is what I do, this is part of who I am. It's much more than just one job or work, is my lifestyle, is my everything. This is what I know for. This is who I am itself. So it's just hanging in there. But how many times, guys, come on. I doubt who actually thought of something like that. But about quitting, no. About stopping, yeah. How many times it comes, but action to stop, no. I'm too stubborn for that.
That sounds like somebody else I know. All right. Describe your feelings when you received your black belt.
It's funny, right, man? Look at this. Carlson, there was no ceremony. There was nothing like that. So I won the nationals in 1993, but I have been, guys, I was a blue belt for 6 years.
Oh, somebody who beat me so far. I'm still
with a blue belt, competing every weekend. Every month at least I was competing. But I was part of a competition team, guys, that for a blue belt be promoted to purple belt, you have to have a white belt to fill the gap, and this purple belt has to go to brown, and the brown belt has to go to black. Boom. You just move in block. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do it. So for me, it took a long time to find the space. And right on the top of me here, I was a blue belt. Amaury Bitacho was a purple belt. So for Amaury to go jump, has to be somebody there on the top of there to, boom, for us to jump and block. You keep it winning everything, And that's the invention of sandbagging, right? A long time ago, it is true. So it got to a point you don't really realize, man. You don't, first of all, there is this big tradition of you don't ask for the belt. Mm-hmm. But Carlson was eating an acai down there at the school in Copacabana. And I got there, me and Babel, and I was just there, and he just eating an acai, we're talking and telling a story, and they're laughing, everybody with a purple mouth. And he looked at me like he said, well, Liborio, you can use your black belt tomorrow. And he just went back and said, like it was nothing. That moment was so important to me. That was a black belt. For him, it was like, oh, Liborio, you can't use a black belt tomorrow. But he continued talking.
Just like that.
Who knows Carlson, man knows he is exactly like that, right?
Yeah, that's funny. So what do you do in that couple seconds after? Do you just turn around, thank you, and turn around and walk away? Or?
Yeah, I was just so happy about it. I was really happy about a black belt because that was a really big accomplishment. Guys, whoever went to school or have done a couple of things there, and we've seen this a lot, and belt ceremonies, people there, very accomplished careers. Sometimes that moment of receiving a black belt means more to them. They have more tears there than got and when they received their diploma. And you see this a lot. The struggle is real. The struggle is real. You have to go through struggles when you train jiu-jitsu. You're going to feel pressure. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to go home super terrible. You got to get used to what do we call this little teaching lessons of life during the training itself. Mm-hmm. Let it go your pride. Let it go your ambitions. Sometimes there's a lot of things there that you can take in analogies for real life. We all know this, but at the same time, it's one of the most, this is a tremendous, honorable, and one of the most pleasurable things that I've ever had in my life, especially receiving from Carlson. Even like with this, he was eating an acai.
That's an amazing story. I love it. It's so Carlson-like too.
That's great. All right, and
the
last one. Speaking of those belts, do you wash your belt?
No, I don't. I don't wash my belt.
We ask everybody, and it's always interesting to hear their response. But it's always great to do that. Listen, it's such an amazing conversation once again. Before we depart and wrap this up, where can people find you? Because you're working on some big projects, especially with the Black Belt magazine, and you have your other things going on right now. Do you want to quickly talk about where can people find you? How can they engage with you? And, where's more information in case there are instructors out there who would like to take their knowledge to the next level from a business and teaching perspective?
Guys, so this is how it happened, just for you to understand, right? I left American Top Team. I started creating Martial Arts Nation. For Martial Arts Nation, I needed people to help me with, and I fall into the UCF, University of Central Florida. University of Central Florida, man, I just fall in love with the kids and the structure itself. And we'll be able to put the first credit courses of BJJ inside the university. So we have a 2-credit course at UCF where we started having a lot of interest from the kids. And in the club, we put 360 members in 1 year. The largest club of the University of Central Florida, which is the second largest university in the United States, UCF. So we did this tremendous job. This amazing thing happened, and COVID hit it. And in the middle of COVID, we decided to bring up a lot of components that I have from Martial Arts Nation to Black Belt Magazine. Because initially I was going to create another license and another association. But I think with the Black Belt Magazine Jiu-Jitsu, we can help everybody with tremendous neutrality, because we're not going to be a competition team. We're not going to be a business going to compete with you. We're going to be a magazine with the structure of the back end with the business solutions. Not just a business solution. We have a goal to create community. So we're going to have events. The people are going to be going there to be awarded, whether they do it. What's the chances of somebody be awarded by IBJJF if you're not a 4-time black belt adult division champion? It's very slim. But how many people are out there that help so much and that contribute so much to our community? Help so many people, given so many jobs, and influence some other people there. So this is something that we're planning on helping too. So there's a lot of interesting things. The Black Belt Magazine Jiu-Jitsu is going to be a great outlet and solutions for whoever is a Jiu-Jitsu school owner.
Beautiful. We'll make sure to include all the links in the notes of the show. So if any of you guys are interested, please reach out. Make sure you do your research and engage as needed. And then shall we wrap this up?
I guess so. There's a ton we did not get to. Your story is incredible. So please come back again. We would love to have you.
We will, for sure. Guys, we gotta get you guys to the Black Belt Magazine Jiu-Jitsu too.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, let's do it. We will have to have them. Absolutely. All right, let's officially wrap this up. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing all the knowledge, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Peace.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Raw Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.